Hey, this is Greg Berger, and you are listening to the Geekcast Radio Network.
My heart is ready to beat. I can feel the wind underneath my feet. I'm gonna jump over the moon, hands in the air, waving up like a balloon. I'm free as a bird, lost in the stars and waving down to earth. Don't know where I'm gonna land.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Cinema Geeks as we continue our Hayao Miyazaki Retrospective. Today, we are looking and reviewing Kiki's Delivery Service. Joining me on today's adventure, as always, is Kevin Optimus Solo. How's it going, man?
It's going well. It's going well, and I'm excited to get into another Miyazaki film. See how everybody reacts to this one.
Yeah, this one's going to be interesting. I gotta say, I'm really curious how we go with this one because it can go a lot of different ways.
For sure.
Also joining us on today's adventure is Hard Candy Manny. How's it going?
What's up, Dan?
It is not much. Kiki, because she flies in on a broom, and there's a bad dad joke of the day. Yay.
But we're not going to explain it. So.
No.
He did. He said she's on a broom.
Oh, thank you.
He could have just said like Kiki because she flies.
Yeah.
We're terrible at these joke things.
Yeah, I'm not bad with how jokes work. But here to join in on the bad joke madness is Matt Fridley Sutton. And how's it going?
Good. I thought of better jokes involving blimps, because the blimps are up too.
They are up. That is very true. There are a lot of things up, like Up Dog.
Oh.
Yeah. Anyways, but yes, today weird introduction to the world of Kiki, the delivery service. But hey, what are you gonna do? But yes, we are going through all of Hayao Miyazaki's films. We last ended with My Neighbor Totoro. Now we are journeying into the world of Kiki's Delivery Service. If you've not listened to the past episodes, definitely go back and do that. And we are all coming up at this with different experiences, different backgrounds. Myself, I've watched a good amount of Miyazaki's films before we got into this. Kevin's brand new. Amanda's watched a few, and I think Matt's probably the most experienced one out of all of us. But Kiki's Delivery Service is an interesting film, and the plot itself is rather basic. It's basically about Kiki and a teenage witch who helps create a delivery service, and it's kind of a coming-of-age movie. And I'm really curious to see what we all thought of this, and I felt like maybe the best person to start with, because I remember when we were talking about our experiences with Miyazaki in our intro episode, I think, Amanda, you brought up this movie, and I think you talked about what your initial thoughts of it when you first saw it way back when. So I'm curious to hear, now that you've watched it again most recently, what are your overall thoughts of Kiki's Delivery Service?
I don't think my opinion changed whatsoever. That's not a bad thing either. It's definitely staying positive for me. I saw it at the right age, and it really struck home for me enough to where those feelings have stayed with me even into adulthood in watching it. And I just, was able to really enjoy the nostalgia of this and really enjoy, Kiki's journey here. So I was glad we got to get to this one finally. This is the one I was looking forward to the most. And I think that this is definitely the only Studio Ghibli film of my childhood. And I'm totally okay with this being, my glimpse into that because I loved it.
Awesome. Interesting. All right. Matt, your overall thoughts on Kiki's Delivery Service?
I think, like Amanda, my opinion didn't change, but I would also say that until I had seen, there was a couple I hadn't seen. So of the ones I had originally seen, it's probably my least favorite Studio Ghibli movie. Well,
that makes me freaking sad, Matt.
Well, no, but here's the thing: Studio Ghibli movies run the gamut of being an 8 out of 10 to a 10 out of 10. So, being the worst of the best type of movies is not too bad of a place to be.
I just don't know why it's the worst for you.
Maybe it works just as strong. The least greatest. Is that the better?
Yeah.
It's the least greatest. Yeah.
This is what the Studio Ghibli podcasts are going to become, is just arguing over which word I used.
Don't use heartwarming, because that didn't work.
I'm not gonna. Never again.
Well, Kevin, I know your opinion had to change because you have not seen this movie before, so I would assume, unless you're like, nope, I still haven't seen it, even though I watched it. So, what are your thoughts on Kiki's Delivery Service?
All right. I would much rather watch Kiki the Teenage Witch than Sabrina the Teenage Witch, so I'll give it that. I do like black cats, so fan of the character of Gigi. And I think it's a cute film. I think I'm getting an evil eye here before I even said anything, but
I can feel it, and I'm far away.
He did too. He looked over right as it was happening.
But I think if I'm okay, since we just talked about My Neighbor Totoro, I mean, if I'm going to compare it to that film, both films are fairly straightforward, fairly simple as far as following the story, and probably about the same number of characters, etc. I just feel like that film was tackling some themes and some aspects of life that I find way more engaging than I did with Kiki's. I don't know.
Kiki's isn't about some crazy
that's what I'm saying.
hard tragedy that she's
right,
going
that's
through.
what I'm saying.
This is finding herself
so I'm drawn more to
situation.
something that's dealing more with something that I can chew on and kind of dissect a little bit
Even
more.
though, how many times have you said that you love coming of age stories? What the fuck is this?
I do.
Coming of age story, Kevin.
It just did not do much for me as far as I just didn't feel like there was a. I like the film. It's got funny moments. It's got great musical things, great visuals. I like the character of Kiki and some of the other characters that we come across. But in the end, when I'm trying to reflect back and only in the mode of comparing it against some of the other films we've seen, I just didn't feel like there was as much for me to really chew on or dissect or really come away with. Yes, it's a coming of age film, and I do like those, but for some reason it just didn't quite resonate as much with me, even though I did still enjoy the film and I still had fun with it.
I'm not really satisfied with that answer.
If it means anything, the first comment he made on the 100 films 80 to 70 was that if any film could touch his cold, numb heart, then that film gets a super bonus. So Totoro can touch even the coldest, numbest of hearts.
There we go.
Yeah. Well, that's
I pay attention.
That's a major pull. I'm impressed with that. Yeah.
I don't even listen to him that carefully.
I think it is interesting to compare to having My Neighbor Totoro and Kiki back to back, not just because in their filmography of Hayao Miyazaki, but they are there's a lot of similarities to them, and it's interesting because I do feel like looking at people's opinions that there seems to be a kind of a dividing line. So people kind of go one way or the other, which one they like more. And they both are very similar in their kind of limited plot. But I like you, Kevin. There's a lot of things I enjoy with Kiki's Delivery Service. Kiki's an interesting, fun character. The world is, it's more true to life, I would say, than most of the Miyazaki films that we've seen so far. Obviously, it's a world about witches, but it doesn't necessarily have the crazy designs, which was almost an interesting change to begin with. But I guess ultimately, too, it is very much coming of age. I do like coming of age movies, but there's something that was not necessarily missing, but not there to the level it was with My Neighbor Totoro or the other movies that I was able to appreciate it as much. And maybe it's because I just can't relate to the character of Kiki as much as I should, because I'm a 31-year-old man, and relating to a teenage girl is not something I'm capable of doing as much as I try. But I think ultimately it's because the dilemma that she's faced with is, in a way, there isn't one until nearly the very end. And unlike with My Neighbor Totoro, where you have that always in the background, where they're dealing with the sickness of their mother, and even when she's not there, that issue is always present. But with this, it's really just her trying to discover the world, which is fine. But I think what ends up happening is when we get into that final third act, which is almost like the second act part 2, or it's almost tacked on near the end, where she is faced with the dilemma of kind of having to discover herself as she's losing these powers. And I thought okay, there's something there that they can explore, but it ends up basically kind of resolving itself rather quickly. It manifests itself really quickly, and then it's resolved almost immediately. And I felt like in a way it almost needed 20 more minutes or something like that, or maybe have that consistently throughout. like to me, like watching it was like watching almost like it might have even been better as a television program where you're, where it could kind of continue that story long term. But so because of that, it didn't really have the same feeling. At the end of it, I was like, it kind of just ended, and it didn't like. I was like, wow, that was a little bit abrupt. It didn't have. It just seemed a little bit like the final climax almost, I think, did the film a disservice rather than a disservice. It almost felt like it was just kind of thrown in there because we need something to end the movie with, and then we move on. But and again, you can kind of look at Tortorella that did the same thing, but I guess I felt like it tied in with the dilemma they were facing a little bit more. So I feel like Amanda, both me and Kevin are not appreciating this nearly as much as we should. So I guess I'm curious, like, to see what is it. You mentioned, like, a big part of this is the fact that this has been one of your favorite films going into this. What is it about Kiki's delivery service that you feel like we aren't simply not understanding? Or we're not picking up enough?
I think with this one, I was more... I was enjoying myself a little bit more because it was a little bit of a lighter situation than what we've been getting, up until now. And I didn't feel like the stakes were as high, but that wasn't a bad thing. I think it was kind of a breath of fresh air from some of the super serious, subject matter that we were getting up until this point. And I'm not saying that I didn't have problems with the movie. It's really hard to keep track of her emotions in this because, like a teenage girl, she is everywhere emotionally and really not rational when it comes to some of her, choices to be upset or whatever. Like, I was never really sure why she was upset at Tombo or whatever. Like, why is she so mad at this guy? But what I really, really did like about it was a lot of, like, the relationships that she built in this, and I definitely wanted to see more of, like, her family dynamic because I thought that was a really cool little blip into her life. I think that in the beginning, I do appreciate that we just kind of, like, jump into it, then we're not questioning, like, witches are real. You're jumped into the story, so you just accept it, and you're not questioning, like, she's got powers, like, what is this? It's right into it, and you can accept it, but I would have liked to see a little bit more of what her life in, like, her town was before she left as a witch, to see what witches kind of meant, what it really meant more to be like a witch, because when we get to, Kiki, her skill is flying, which we don't really get a lot of her development, even though she's supposed to be training. I don't know what she's supposed to be training when nobody's teaching her anything, but I think that her story of finding herself is really accented by how she reacts to people in these situations with the people that she finds herself in. And I think that, her witch customs are pretty cool, a little antiquated, but I think it makes an interesting, start to some of these relationships, definitely, and to see how people react to her actually being a witch. And, of course, I love Gigi, the little cat. He looks just like Mad Mardigan, and I imagine my cat to have a deep dude voice and be really sassy and funny all the time and sarcastic anyways, so that fit. But I think also there was this, like, sense of, innocence to her, and I could really relate to that because you're trying to hold on to your innocence and you're trying to come into your own at the same time, and you find yourself thrust into situations where you have to decide how to be you in that situation. And I thought that was pretty cool, seeing how she stacked up to some of the smaller challenges that she did face, and how she actually treated people and how people responded to her too.
See, I agree with the fact that it's a fresh breath of fresh air, and that it's light, and that if you're going through the filmography like we are, maybe it's a good thing to have after some of these other films that have been tackling some deeper situations. I'm not disagreeing with any of that. So I don't want it to come across wrong. I'm agreeing with, like, what Matt was saying, that regardless of what I'm saying as far as details about it, I still think it's a good film. I'm just saying, then, if I was to take it outside of just this kind of fun, light, airy, whimsical coming of age tale, if I'm then comparing it to some of these other films, I'm going to gravitate a little bit more towards those other films because I just think they have more to discuss, more to think about, more to stick with you after the fact. This one's just kind of like a fun, watch it, and to me, it's not really going to stick with me that much.
Why do you have to be
afterwards.
punched in the face with some big, epic, life-changing event or something that's, so, heavy on what the movie's trying to say?
I don't have to be. I'm just saying if I'm
if you
comparing
were
the two.
comparing them though as its own movie,
Okay.
would you feel that same way? Because all you're doing is looking at the other ones now. All you're doing is comparing to.
Well, no, I think even if you just look at it as a standalone film, you're like what Dan was saying, you're going to come across with not maybe something's missing, but something that could there have been just a tiny bit more involved with something like we're talking about. She doesn't necessarily come across. Not that you don't need an antagonist or you don't need necessarily like a battle or anything like that, but could it have had something else to kind of elevate some of the emotions she was going through outside of just somebody coming of age and dealing with those random regular emotions? I guess
I mean, really deep down, she's just a teenager. You know what I mean? And this
Right.
is a story of a young girl trying to find her own as a teenager, as a young woman, in a situation where she's on her own now.
I do agree also with you about the way that people. It was interesting to see the way people react to witches, and it's nice to kind of see them in a different light than what a lot of times what we get depicted to us in films and TV, et cetera, et cetera. Like I liked that it wasn't just like this automatic negative or scared or any of those types of connotations. It was just kind of like, oh, these are just witches and that's what they do, and they're kind of rare, but there wasn't just like this prejudice against them or anything like that. So I thought that was added to the breath of fresh air aspect that you've been talking about.
And I agree. Maybe it's unfair to consistently compare it to what came before because it is trying to be its own thing. So it definitely should be judged on what it's attempting to accomplish. And similar with My Neighbor Totoro, which I liked, but again, I didn't necessarily put it on the same level as some of the Miyazaki films we've gotten to so far. I guess ultimately when I was watching it, I enjoyed it, but I wasn't necessarily compelled by it. And it may be just a personal preference aspect of it. And I think, Amanda, you said you brought up a lot of great points about what it's doing really well. How it does bring you into this world, and how Kiki, at the heart of it, her story is really heartwarming. She is going through a lot. It is tackling some fresh ideas here. But ultimately, like as a character, I liked Kiki, but she wasn't necessarily someone that I felt I was as nearly as compelling as other characters we've dealt with, or one that even on her own that I don't know, like I felt like I was getting bits and pieces here and there, but I wanted, I guess, a little bit more is what I was saying. And I guess like Kevin, I feel like maybe I'm coming overly negative, and that's not my intention. I do think it's well toward film. There's a lot about it that's really to appreciate. From, again, it's probably a broken record, but the animation's amazing because it always is, because it's a Miyazaki film, and the flying sequences are great. And there's a lot.
Even the animation on Gigi running, I thought was phenomenal. Like the cat running down the street just looked so perfect to me.
I guess it's, for me, it just felt like it tackled like little things here and there. And it like all the sums didn't come up, all the sums didn't kind of come together to what is it that saying? And I lost it. All the parts don't match the sum. I'm butchering it. But basically, I enjoyed the individual parts of it, but as a whole, it didn't seem to really come together as much as it just felt like I mentioned. I think really what hurts it for me is that I enjoy a lot of it, and it's just like the last 15 minutes where I feel a little bit let down in the sense of where it just feels forced, and like that last, it was enjoyable to see, but it almost seems like it wasn't as necessary for this movie, where you have this action sequence, and we do see growth of the character of Kiki, but it almost felt like they were, like I mentioned previously, that they presented a dilemma just to immediately solve it, to justify this situation that was going on. And up to that point, that didn't happen. Everything else felt rather organic, and her relationship with all these characters and the way it was built, it all felt very, really well put together, except for that last bit. And then that just seems like it was the one thing kind of missing. So,
the other thing weird about that last little sequence is the kid's hanging, in the same location for a long time, and she has to come and save the day, so to speak. Why wasn't that inflatable bullseye for the landing already under him?
Kevin,
What?
This is a movie with a talking cat.
I'm just saying, like, what were they doing? They had a position nowhere near where he would have fallen.
They have one bullseye per city, and they have to, like, you can't get it. But
I was like, now he comes over here, even though he's been hanging in that spot for the last 10 minutes.
But
Sorry.
Matt, are you going to back me up on this movie, like, a little bit, even though I know it's not your favorite?
Actually, I am, I guess. I've been hearing you guys talk about how you think it came out of nowhere and it felt a little rushed, but the blimp and the weather that could affect the blimp is mentioned in the first 20 seconds of this movie. The blimp comes up no less than 7 or 8 times before you visually see it, and every time they're talking about how the weather is going to affect it and how it might go off course and what towns it's going to visit to. So, like, they promise the viewer you're going to see this blimp and weather's going to affect it. And so when it happens, it was fulfilling to me, honestly. And I get that it's convenient, but I mean, that's kind of movies at their core is convenience, because they don't happen like real life, because real life isn't like the movies. And so when the blimp goes off course, I've heard a lot of people complain about it, but to me, it seems like the natural course for this movie. And you can nitpick little things about it. I don't have a single problem with it.
I guess my issue necessarily isn't as much with the blimp sequence, because like that's fine in a certain sense. It was more so how they present this dilemma of her like losing her powers, and like that I think that makes a lot of sense. We have this witch where she it's this conflict is going to ensue where you're kind of leaving the life that you once knew as you're kind of growing older into this new world, even though she's only 13. But whatever, that's it's Japan, they have different standards. But like I really like that idea of how the metaphorical aspects of that and how that kind of relates to just the coming of age in general. And I guess like how it I get like you're saying that was it was foreshadowed throughout, but I guess I wish that dilemma was a little bit more peppered through a little bit more, and maybe that I think it would have just solidified what they were going for by the end of the film a little bit better.
I could see that. I almost feel like more people's problem is that the blimp happens, the biggest climax happens, and then the movie immediately ends. Because, she saves the kid, and then you have 30 seconds before those credits are going. But that's a classic Japanese storytelling style, to have no resolution or very little resolution. I do think there are a bunch of tiny conflicts that slowly build towards that, though. Even if they aren't necessarily I've got to fly. No, they are very fly-based. Like from the very first thing of the very first delivery all the way down to where she can no longer deliver and then gets over that, it does slowly build all around her character. I don't know. I think this movie is very well crafted, and I get that you guys are being a little negative, but not saying it's terrible or the worst ever. But I think there's a lot of really subtle things that are not getting mentioned yet. Like the fact that Kiki and Gigi have the exact same storyline, where they both from the very first conflict they both go through very different versions of I'm meeting a new friend to help me get over this tough time. They both do that in the very first delivery. All the way to we're both trying to start our own love stories, but one goes differently than the other. They're having the exact same story on just a different scale because we're following Kiki instead of Gigi. And I think that's a masterfully done thing that just gets blown right over.
No, I agree. I like that. I agree with everything. I didn't necessarily have a problem with the blimp aspect. That wasn't one of the things that brings me down a tiny bit on this film. I do like the Gigi storyline, and I do like how that kind of parallels in ways and kind of in the different ways that it does divert from Kiki's story. I find it interesting too that apparently one of the differences between the Japanese, the original version and the Disney-fied version is obviously at one point we see that they can no longer communicate with each other. And I guess in the original version that is like that for the rest of the film. And in the Disney version, we see that they are somewhat able to communicate again once she's found her confidence again. What are your guys' thoughts on that? Do you think that it would have been better like it did in the original version, where that was just kind of an aspect of her kind of growing up into this other person is that she loses the ability to do it because now she is more mature, or a different person that's past that stage in her life? Or
No, that would make me super fucking sad if she never got to talk to Gigi again. Like, I was distraught when she couldn't talk to Gigi anymore. Like, that's really upsetting, and that bumped up the stakes for me, and that really set, like, the gravity of that and what was happening to her in for me, because Gigi is such a big part of her life, and they really need each other so much, especially in this situation, that it was really heartbreaking to see her not be able to communicate with him and him not be able to communicate with her, because you can see how much they care about each other. And I think that them being able to communicate is super valuable to both of them, and it really puts heart into their relationship too, and like what you see in the film. So I was really upset that they couldn't communicate, and if they wouldn't be able to by the end, I would be more upset. I wouldn't be able to accept that.
I want to agree and disagree. Like, I agree that it's important that she does get that back, just because we don't have a lot of precedent for witches and witch powers. But we do know that her mom talks to the cat at the beginning, so an adult witch that still has her powers can talk to cats, is what we've established in the beginning.
Yeah.
And so at the end of the movie, if we're saying, no, Kiki's fine and she's got her powers back, if she can't talk to the cat, then I'm going to question whether she has her powers back, what happened. Like, we don't have enough precedent for that option. Like, I usually hate when an American company brings a foreign movie over here and changes the ending even a little bit. Like that would be a terrible thing to do. But I think, honestly, it's a better story to have that roundness of, no, she's got her powers back or she doesn't, because they don't have enough time to explain why she's got some of them back and not some of the others.
Yeah, I agree with what Matt's saying, because it's like it would seem kind of like convenient if it's like, no, she can fly, but she can't talk to animals. And yeah, when getting into the idea of her kind of being able to kind of balance both worlds, I think if that's going to be a key element, if that she can maintains that, because that has been kind of her linchpin to her life since she got to this new location. So I think it's important that we get a little bit of an establishment. Plus, I'm always, I want more Phil Hartman whenever I can get it. So.
Yeah, that voice sure throws you off the first time you hear it.
Yeah.
I mean, luckily the lines that are coming out of it are so good that you stick with it for a while, and that kind of builds on you. I was also a couple other parts that we haven't really talked about. Obviously, she goes on all these different deliveries, and one of the main ones that is revisited is her visit to the elderly lady, and the two elderly ladies who are sending a delivery to her granddaughter. How did you guys take that, and was anybody bothered by the fact that we didn't really necessarily get much of a, not necessarily resolution, I don't know if that's the right word to use, but it didn't seem like it tied off anything as far as that went. I mean,
I don't think any of her relationships were tied off, because it was a story about beginnings. None of her relationships were closed off. This was all showing beginnings of relationships. The same thing with the lady she met in the woods. You know what I mean? There was never.
No, I was
any,
talking
like,
about more
closure.
so, like, not necessarily with the ladies. I was talking about more so of the point of introducing this this bratty little, ungrateful.
It's to show the contrast between how Kiki is acting and how other kids are acting.
Also, that kid does come up again.
Yeah.
She's in the car when they go see the blimp the first time.
She's one of Tombo's friends.
Yeah.
Right. I was just saying that it didn't ever seem to. There was no interaction between them, or no. It was just I'm observing someone that's much different than me. I guess. I guess I was just hoping for like one more scene with those two that had something to do with what Kiki got out of it, maybe. But
I guess I felt like we got that just based upon her reaction. I mean, I want to be against it if we got an additional scene, but I was fine with the way it was handled, because I felt like that element was kind of already told, and they could have maybe gone back to it, but I felt like that's when they were starting to move into the other aspects of her development, and like what we mentioned previously, as she was kind of getting into her dilemma of trying to regain her powers and things like that.
What did you guys think of Where's Waldo? I'm sorry, he's wearing the exact same outfit as Waldo, and his face almost looks like he could have been Where's Waldo's son.
But he's a freaking Lawrence brother, okay? So
Yes, voiced by Matthew Lawrence. But what did you guys think of that aspect of it, of the love angle and Tombo as a character and kind of his interaction with Kiki and kind of how it played into the bigger part?
I don't think it was necessarily like a love thing. I think it was more like a friendship and like a mutual interest in one another. It doesn't have to be exactly romantic. You know what I mean?
Right.
I think maybe it kind of played into that because of her age, and they bring up boys. You know what I mean, and how she acts when boys are mentioned. You know what I mean? But I think that what I took away from that mostly wasn't like a love story. It was more like a fascination on his part and her being interested in him as well. And because, I mean, he's just a normal boy, too, you know what I mean? She's a witch. I think that there was some definite learning from each other, and it was cool.
I did like how it wasn't cliche and how it was handled. And like Amanda was mentioning, it's not. You can read into it a few ways. Is it a friendship? Is it just that natural awkwardness when you have, two people of that age kind of coming together and as they're dealing with all the different new emotions that they deal with as you enter into your preteen, teen years. So I thought it was cute. It was, I don't necessarily know if it was something that was the most compelling part of the movie for me, but I do think it at least approached their relationship in an interesting way, and I did like the characters together and their dynamic. It was at least fun to watch. I don't know, Matt, if you have anything else you wanted to add to that.
I mean that comes. I know I kind of mentioned it as a love story, but I mean it isn't on its face a love story, and it's very innocent, and that's kind of a good play for it. But it almost like if this was a Hollywood movie, it probably would have developed into a love story, especially if it went on another 20 minutes or 10 minutes. But I like it where it ends, and I like it how it develops. Like they do a good job with it.
I do like the fact that she's the one saving him at the end. That's always good.
Yeah.
For sure.
We mentioned a little bit of the voice cast already. Phil Hartman, of course, and Kirsten Dunst, and the Lawrence brothers as well. But we brought it up the previous voice cast in the other films, and considering this is the English dub of the Miyazaki films. Overall, how did you guys feel about the voice cast and how well they fit the characters that they were portraying?
I think if we're, specifically obviously talking about the 1998 Disney version here, I think I was impressed with the number of professional voice actors that are involved in this, and I didn't look beforehand to see who was voicing who. I just kind of watched the movie and listened, but there was a reason probably that none of them stood out necessarily as distracting or whatever because of the number of super famous voice actors that are involved in this, from Tress MacNeille to Cass Soucy, Jeff Bennett, Debbie Derryberry. These are people that are just real good at their craft. Like I said, I still am a little on the fence at Phil Hartman as Gigi. I don't know if that would have been my choice. I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with having it a deep male, character or whatever, but I was a little thrown off because of the fact that it was Phil Hartman and it's such a recognizable voice.
Yeah.
But I don't think necessarily he did a bad job with that. I thought he delivered his lines real well.
They're not gonna be
no,
like,
no,
oh,
I know. I'm not saying it from a kid's standpoint. I'm just saying it from my reactions as I watched it.
It actually kind of reminds me of a movie we'll get to in the future of Howl's Moving Castle with who do they have? Which is
Billy Crystal.
Billy Crystal's voice, yeah.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Exactly, yeah. Where it's just like they're just two people I know so well from other things that seeing them in like a character like a cat or a talking fire, it's just weird to watch.
But yeah, overall I was impressed by the majority of them. Like I said, a little on the fence with Phil Hartman, but the rest I was pretty impressed. Amanda, you liked it?
Yeah, big fan. Matthew Lawrence, always have been. So that rekindled the fire, just like with Freddie Prinze. You guys are talking Wing Commander.
Oh, that's upping that movie up. Jeez.
Oh,
Matt, any thoughts on the voice cast or anything else you wanted to bring up that we didn't touch upon yet?
No. Like I don't know. Like voice actors don't they don't bring me out of a thing. Like they have to be really bad to break that for me.
I can show you some.
Yeah, well, I'm sure you Like you have got me covered on that. But like, I don't know. Like, it's very rare that I'm gonna be like that. I know that voice, and that brings me out of it. And in some instances, it actually brings me more into it. Because like I watch a lot of anime, and anime, like in America, there isn't a lot of voice actors that do it. Like you know, you got these Disney brought over movies that'll have like, you know, a massive cast or whatever. But like if you're watching, say, the Gundam TV shows, like I've mentioned a number of times, the voice actor that does Duo and Gundam Wing appears in every single one.
Right.
And so it's like we're pointing out, hey, it's that guy. Hey, it's that guy. And so like though it might briefly be like, I know that voice. Like if the story's not terrible, I'm gonna just lose the voice actor and I don't think about it. And so yeah, that doesn't really happen here.
Yeah, and I agree. And like Phil Hartman was a little bit weird to hear, but once you kind of get into it, it's fine. Though
Right.
I did feel like a few of his comments did seem like, I don't know, out of place in the movie. I'm like, I couldn't imagine that like would be something Miyazaki would write, or you know.
Are you talking about the naked painting line?
Yeah.
That was the most awkward moment of the entire film, and I just was like speechless, staring at Amanda. Like, did they just really say that? Is that Disney putting that in there, or was that in the original version?
Well, looking at some of the trivia, like from a lot of that was like him kind of ad-libbing, adding his own humor to it, which is, you know, voice actors are known to do. And I love Phil. I mean, unfortunately, you know, he's late Phil Hartman, but some of them I think were worked more than others. Other ones, like you mentioned, like that line just seemed, I don't know, out of place, or like just from a different movie altogether. But overall, I was.
You mean Titanic?
What?
Except from a different movie altogether, like Titanic.
Yeah, exactly. It probably would have made more sense in there. But overall, like Matt was saying, no one really took me out. I really honestly didn't realize that it was Kirsten Dunst until after I looked at the cast when the movie was completed. So
it took us a little while. It took us probably a third or halfway through the movie before we mentioned that one. Is it a theme, or is this the first time? I can't remember looking back at the other films. Has there been something in the movie or in the background that says Ghibli or Studio Ghibli or something in all the films, or is this the first time that's popped up? Because the bus said it right across the top or on the side or something.
I think, this is the second Ghibli film with the third. Sorry, no, third, because Castle in the Sky is the first. So, not that I can remember. I don't remember anything, and I was seeing that too. I didn't see anything in My Neighbor Totoro unless I missed it, and I didn't see anything in Castle in the Sky. So,
I'll be interested to see if that's something that comes up again or not. Not that it matters one way or the other. It's just kind of something interesting to see and be like, oh, I now know what that means.
And apparently Miyazaki himself has a cameo. I guess you would call it a cameo in an animated movie at one point as well. So,
Nice.
which is cool to see. But yeah,
He sounds like a cute little old man, like the cutest Asian little old man I've ever seen in my life.
probably
Oh,
is.
he's great. Like anything you see of him is amazing.
He just seems so nice. And I didn't even hear him talk. I just saw him smiling at people. I'm like, that guy is super nice.
Yeah.
Like, he gives full-size Snickers out of Halloween and stuff.
Hopefully not herring pumpkin pot pies. That sounds like the most disgusting thing ever.
What was interesting, though, the one part that was changed for the Disney movie, where for the Disney version of it, where they were delivering coffee, but they changed it to hot chocolate because they didn't think kids drink coffee. But back in the day in 1998. Kids today, they're drinking lattes at the age of 12. So
For real.
They also said in the Japanese version that Gigi was a female voice or a female character, and that it was also much less sarcastic and humorous, and a little bit more like a cautionary sidekick.
Yeah, he still was kind of like her Jiminy Cricket or whatever, kind of like, hey, I don't think we should do this. Hey, we should just go back and do this. But she didn't listen.
it kind of makes you realize how much you can change a movie, even considering you're dealing with the same animated characters, but just changing things a little bit, it's very different based upon just the adaptation that we can make, which is kind of scary when you think about it. So
Yeah.
An interesting note on that, taking all of the same animations and changing it entirely. I know a writer who, a comic book got made, and they made the whole comic book, and then the original writer of the thing was like, you're not paying me enough, I'm not letting you publish this, whatever, breakdown of communications. They took it to another writer, and they were like, hey, we've got all of this art done, and all of the bubbles are done, but you need to rewrite this without seeing the original script so that it's an thing that we could put your, and then we'll pay you this amount that was less than the other guy wanted. And so what this comic book guy did was he took all the pages, threw them up into the air, and then just assembled a new thing based on all these pages and rewrote all of the words, and it was an entirely different book in the end. But all the same art.
That's kind of fucking genius, if you ask me.
Yeah, I love that guy. He's great.
Well, luckily that didn't happen here. So, overall, let's get final thoughts and your overall grade for Kiki's delivery service. Amanda, we started with you, so let's start with you here too. Overall grade and anything else you would like to mention regarding Kiki.
Oh man, I think my biggest issue was the witch training. Like, I don't get how she's supposed to be training. Like, what, she's supposed to teach her stuff out of thin air, teach herself stuff out of thin air? Or, what was she supposed to be learning? How can you learn your witch powers if nobody's like trying to teach you?
I kept thinking that some of the people she was going to run into were going to be secretly or going to be revealing themselves to be witches afterwards, like whether it was the home that she stayed in, whether it be the other, I guess it was just the older girl that she hung out with there and kind of went on the trip with or whatever, spent the night at her house. I just kept expecting some of these people to be teaching or something or showing that they were witches, but it never quite went that way.
I mean, all in all, though, like, I was fine with it because there was all this other stuff happening, and she was getting better at flying, and that was kind of what her niche was, just like fucking Harry Potter. Like, he's not super great at magic, but he can fly a fucking broom like nobody's business. But that aside, I really loved her willingness to help other people, and I thought she was super genuine, and her really, like, cute, gregarious nature really kind of made her interactions with all these honestly really kind people that she was meeting, besides, like, the tiny kids. I made their relationships super heartfelt, and I appreciated it. And, I don't know, I think I'm going to give this movie a freaking 8. I'm going to give it an 8.
8 out of 10. Very nice. Mm-hmm. Matt, final thoughts and overall grade for Kiki's delivery service.
Though I think we can all agree it could have been done better, part of me always just assumed that this isn't so much a part of her training as, like, witches training, but ever training as a witch to go live with non-witches for a year, because they said it's only going to last a year. And then I assumed she'd go right back to her witch studies afterwards. But we know we don't get that resolution. We don't get any more discussion on it, so it could have been done better if that's what they wanted. I don't know. I love this movie. It's great. I don't know. 8 out of 10.
8 out of 10. The least greatest Hayao Miyazaki film, as we
at least
say.
Of the ones I originally saw.
Yeah. Kevin, final thoughts and overall grade.
Final thoughts. Let's see. I do want to question or call out the mom here because she is apparently too busy with her life to teach Kiki anything, because it's like she's finally turning this age and going to be going off for a year, and she's like, "Oh, I haven't taught you anything yet." Like, what?
She just said potions.
I just feel like she should have spent a little bit more time with her daughter and taught her some more things instead.
Negligent mom in a Disney movie. I can't imagine.
So maybe that was just more the
working
Disney
hard,
version.
All right, she was a hard-working career woman.
Like I said, this is a fun film. It is like a breath of fresh air, especially with some of the topics that we've been tackling with some of the other films. So I think it hits right if you're going through the filmography to kind of see this somewhat in the after. I don't know if it's necessarily in the middle, but close to the middle here. And I think there's a lot of humor in there. I think Gigi's a great character. That's probably the one that steals the show for me. I like the cat better than I like Kiki, which I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. But overall, it's fun, and there's not really too many things that you can like blow a hole in as far as the film goes. But overall, I can't grade it as high as I did some of the other ones. So, and I got to go back and like actually look at what I gave all these other ones because I'm probably being hypocritical. But I'm going to sit somewhere in the 6 out of 10 range for me.
I just don't get how I hear what you're saying, but I just don't understand why you can't just appreciate this more simple, heartwarming film. Like, why do you have to have such
to have it
deep thing? So why couldn't you get fulfillment out of this?
Because it wasn't just about it being just fun and whimsical and all that and light and whatever. That's not why I'm grading it a 6 out of 10. It's graded at 6 out of 10 because even while doing that, I still felt like there was something missing or something that could have elevated it on some level in some way, shape, or form. It didn't need something tragic. It didn't need some big, dilemma or
You
some
wanted
big
something
crux.
more on adult level.
No, I just wanted something, and maybe it's because, like Dan said, I'm not a 13-year-old girl. I also didn't see this when I was a kid, so maybe coming at it as a 30-something-year-old man in America, there's not enough for me to relate to where it's going to just be able to survive just on surface value. At the same time, I'm still giving it a positive score. I still think it's a good movie, so I'm just a little less on it than you guys are, who
And you're going to
saw
be
it
a
previously.
little less sleeping in the bed and sleeping on the couch tonight.
Dan, help me out here.
Sorry. Yeah. So I'm along with Kevin, and it's hard to explain, but bottom line is, as I'm watching it, I'm enjoying it, but I'm just not compelled by it, which is very, I guess, it's obtuse in the criticism, I know, and it's very, general. But it's hard to really pinpoint it. And like I said, I did have some issues with just like the structure of it, but maybe perhaps I'm just not giving it enough credit. And as Matt and Amanda both brought up, a lot of the subtle things that it was doing that honestly maybe I missed on my first go around. So I do think there were aspects of it that I didn't appreciate because maybe I wasn't paying close enough attention. And with Miyazaki, there are a lot of things that maybe you almost, especially going through all the films, that you take for granted, like the great animation. It's just by this point, it's like you expect it. So when you're doing it so great all the time, when you get it, you almost of course, that's the norm. But like I said, it's a solid, great, it's an enjoyable film. It's there's a lot going for it, and it's certainly I appreciate it, like not being cliche or forcing in a relationship angle when it doesn't belong, and making an antagonist that doesn't exactly need to be there, and it's just kind of the story about life. So I think there's a lot to learn, but for me, it's an overall 7 out of 10, which is still a good score, just not at the top echelon with some of the other films that we've gone through so far. But next week, we are changing things up. Next time we talk about Miyazaki, we'll be changing a little bit things up. As for me, it'll be a first-time watch as we get into Porco Rosso, which we talked about before we recorded. Sounds delicious, but apparently is not so much based upon the actual character. But we'll talk about that in the world of Miyazaki as we go. But if you want to interact with us, let us know who's right, who's wrong. Is 6 too low? Is 9 too high? Or, are we all crazy? You can do that by going to the episode post at geekcastradio.com. You can follow the overall show on Twitter by following Cinema Geekcast. We are also all on Twitter. Matt, what is your Twitter name?
I am at Fridley Scent.
Amanda?
Hard Candy Mandy, eyes, no eyes.
And Kevin?
Mine's at Optimus Solo. Matt, just real quick, you seen Porco Rosso?
Okay, so Porco Rosso and I have a thing. I bought 2 copies of it originally, a Japanese version and a used American version, and neither one would play all the way through. So, I've sat down to try to watch Porco Rosso 6 times. I own 4 copies now, and I'm not 100% sure I've seen it from end to end, but I have spent at least 4 hours with it.
Nice. Okay. Dan, I didn't mean to cut you off. What's your Twitter?
I am at Movie Revolt. So Porco Rosso may be the first one that no one has seen completely through. So that'll be intriguing to talk about as we get into further of Miyazaki's retrospective. But that'll be it for this week. We'll be back shortly with more Cinema Geeks goodness. Thanks for listening.
I can feel the wind underneath my feet. I'm gonna jump over the moon, hands in the air, waving up like a balloon.